All right, Ryan, you asked me about how do I make sure that as I'm teaching and planning the sermon calendar that I don't kind of err to my bias and just teaching my sweet spots and make sure that we hit different topics, different themes, and really do a balanced job of shepherding people with the word. And so I tried to find kind of the document I put together that explains this, and I couldn't. I'll still look for it. But so instead of having a meeting about it, because I know everybody's busy, I thought I would just shoot this video. And Stacy, I sent it to you because you've talked about and shared interest in having more development and more conversations around teaching. So maybe you'll find this interesting and helpful. So here's just a few minutes on how I do that. And so this is the Matrix I talked about, Ryan, that you made fun of and sent me a picture of the Matrix movie. But here's what I meant. On the left side, as I plan the sermons for the year, the teaching calendar, I want to have a balance of book studies, spiritual formation, and felt needs. Now, those aren't necessarily one-third, 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 but I want to make sure that all three of those types of teaching, types of preaching are used in the year. So the book study is pretty self-explanatory. We take a book, or maybe not necessarily a whole book, but maybe the Beatitudes or a particular passage, and we really unpack it verse by verse, piece by piece. This does a couple of things that I think is really helpful. It teaches our people how to study the Bible because we're constantly talking about the context and we're constantly having them read through it, study it as a group. But it also causes us to engage in all of Scripture, including the hard parts. So like when we went through the Gospel of Mark, we didn't just get the awesome, easy stuff, but we also had to deal with some of the hard sayings of Jesus. So that's really helpful. Spiritual formation is more your kind of systematic topical approaches. So it's all about this particular things that we're wanting to do in making disciples, shaping how they think about the Scripture. For an example, last summer, all three of our churches did the Essential series. So we took the key doctrines that our people need to be grounded in, and we taught those. That would fit into the spiritual formation category. And then I think felt needs are important. I think churches tend to either err in the side of being all about felt needs, and so they don't do a good job in spiritual formation or teaching people how to self-feed through the study of the Bible, and they become super attractional, consumeristic minded. Or we err on the side of, we're expositional and we just do exegesis, and we don't do exactly what Jesus and the apostles did oftentimes, was deal with areas of tension in the culture or what was going on in the church. So, for example, our margin series, we've done that, and we talked about how to help build in margin in your resources, your time, your life. That was a huge felt needs. We started January off with the felt needs, kind of half felt needs, half spiritual formation, about how to make wise choices, but that was a big deal. So those are the types that of teaching that I try to include, but then there's a style and approach to those teachings that I think are important too, because you can exhaust your people, or we can treat them like spiritual buffets and just kind of fatten them up, or we can just be so passive if we err on one of these three. So I think I want to always have certain sermons that I really take a teaching approach, so we're really pulling the text apart, we're really digging into the background, we're really helping people understand what the Scripture says. In other sermons, they're about challenge, and they're about going after the emotions and the will, and really challenging people to be obedient to whatever it is the Scripture's calling us to do. Kyle's probably the best at this, and he leans in that direction. So I have to sometimes push Kyle to do more teaching or gospel rest. And then the third one is really the gospel rest, where there's no, hey, here's the big takeaway, here's the big application, other than here's what the gospel says about you, here's what we need to understand. And I think if you have a good balance of those types of approaches, people don't just get this tunnel vision. And if you take all three of those different types of messages, your church are likely to get a well kind of balanced out approach to teaching and shepherding that way, and it not be kind of this one style that might create lack. So hope that's helpful, guys.